Okay, that's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Navigating the Future of Finance series, the third in the series for this year, and the last one before the festive break. So welcome and good afternoon. Just as a reminder, the series is hosted by both Protiviti and Robert Half. Together as a single enterprise, we are both a global business consulting firm and a talent solutions firm, operating across different industries. But more particular to this session, we have a particular strength in the finance function. And as a result, we have many CFOs and financial directors that are a part of our core client base. And as a part of that relationship, we are listening to those clients all the time and having an appreciation of what the challenges in the marketplace is today. So as I said, this is the third in the series that we've had this year. We started off with building a resilient finance function with Michael Melrose back there in September. We then moved on to an agenda around people and building capability within finance and retaining that capability within finance. And I'm really pleased today to be introducing you to Harrison Jardine, who's joining me, because we're going to talk about decoding technology in finance. Harrison leads our automation practice in the Protiviti UK business and serves a number of clients, again, across industry, and a number of those clients are the CFOs and the financial directors. So Harrison is well armed with real day experience of building technology solutions and automation solutions into the finance function. So without further ado, because the half hour goes incredibly quickly, in terms of questions, do pop any questions in the chat, and if we do have time, we very rarely do, but if we do have time, we'll get the questions asked. If we don't have time, we'll certainly try and do some direct follow-up. So Harrison, over to you.
Great, thanks, Scott. So before we dive into the topic, I just wanted to reflect on the series so far, some of the challenges and priorities that have been raised, and how the webinar that we're about to talk about and technology as a whole can help to address some of those challenges. So when we think about running a resilient function, we asked you as a cohort what your biggest risks are in relation to resilience. What we heard back were business growth and scaling, technology disruption, and ability to attract and retain top talent. From a business growth and scaling perspective, we're working with a lot of organizations that are looking to scale their business, but retain or manage a size of operations that doesn't have to scale with the business. And a lot of organizations are using automation technology and more advanced technology such as machine learning and AI to enable the business growth and scaling whilst maintaining a more measurable cost base. So we'll provide a few examples of that as we go through. And then looking at the people webinar that Clive ran, I think one of the interesting things from a technology perspective is when trying to develop those internal talent and skills and attract talent, we're seeing a lot of shift in the finance sector as a whole, of the finance function as a whole, from the requirements and capabilities that the finance professionals want to have. And Scott, we've been having a lot of discussions around this as well, in terms of the expectations of new talent and emerging talent in the finance space, expecting to learn more about technology. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in our experience, one of the challenges for a lot of CFOs and financial directors is the retention of top talent. And we're seeing that graduate community in particular, those people that are still learning the trade of finance, wanting to couple that, building those technical finance skills with some form of technology capability, typically in the analytics automation space, and they feel it's inherent in their role. And I think certainly companies that can offer both that opportunity will retain that top talent. Unfortunately, companies that can't, it's going to be a real challenge to attract that sort of talent pool into your business. So it's a really important talent retention agenda that we're seeing.
Absolutely, thanks, Scott. And as we go through this, the technology that we speak about are many of the tools that are available now in the market are tailored towards those end users, and therefore having centres of excellence within your finance function is more accessible now than ever before. And today we'll then look into how you maximise data and automation within finance function to enable transformation and growth. Before we do so, it's really helpful for us to get a base understanding of where each of the each of you are on your automation journey. So we'll run a quick Menti poll to understand where you are, but to give a quick overview, we kind of categorize into 4 buckets. Exploration. So we've done some automation. We haven't quite established that center of excellence, that enterprise strategy, but we're starting to explore the technology more. Adoption. We've got that center of excellence. We have an enterprise strategy and we've adopted the tools. Expansion. Now that we've got this full core foundation of technology, how do we expand into new technology such as AI and machine learning and others, or not started, just not aware of any current automation projects and programs? And there's something for each bucket as we go through this, but it would just be really helpful to start to get that. So if we sorry,
no, sorry to interrupt. And so, Harrison, what I will say is for everybody out there, I think we're all pretty familiar with polls and surveys now in our brave new remote world. But Menti, obviously, use the link there, pop it into your phone. It's a very safe link, and share where you are in your journey. Or alternatively, there's a QR code in the chat there that you can highlight with your phone. So really quite straightforward, and we'll use this for one other question later on in the session. But just to get your perspective, that will allow Harrison to focus a little bit more his experiences into the community that we've got on today.
Great. So I think
just take a minute to do that. So we'll just give. Don't worry, we'll just give you a minute.
Yeah, and I think we'll start sharing the results of the Menti poll as well in a moment.
Here we go. So we've got the results coming through now. So Harrison, hopefully you can see that as well. Just nod. Brilliant.
Yeah. So as expected, I think we've got a wide range of experience and where people are on those automation journeys across the base that we have online. We'll just give everyone a few more moments to.
I would encourage you to contribute. We've got sort of 40, 50 people on the call, so I know people are probably just still trying to work out the buttons, but anything you're happy to share would be really helpful. It's a definite spike there. There's a definite tower there, Harrison, around adoption, isn't there?
Yeah, and we're seeing that a lot. Automation as a capability isn't necessarily new in the marketplace, and a lot of organizations are starting to use it. But how do you take it to that next step is something that we'll cover in the next section of the webinar. So yeah, really helpful to get that perspective from everyone. Just give it another couple of seconds, see if there's any last minute submissions, and then we can jump forward.
Yeah, let's jump forward. I think that gives us a good guide.
Yep. Great. Are you able to see my screen again?
We are, Harrison, yeah.
Perfect. So one of the really interesting things when talking to people about their automation journey is lots of organizations and lots of functions refer to automation in different ways. But what we found is when evaluating how and where automation can be leveraged across a function, particularly in finance, to improve processes, controls, etc., there needs to be 3 distinct areas that are considered and combined to drive end-to-end process automation. And those 3 areas are data automation, workflow automation, and process automation. What we mean by that is, from a data automation perspective, how do we ensure that we have the right data in the right place at the right time, because the foundation of automation from a process and workflow perspective is actioning data that's being provided. It's being able to make decisions or drive processes or perform tasks based on the data that we have. So one area of automation that's often underlooked or forgotten about when talking about transformation of a finance function is that data layer. So you need to ensure that data automation is part of that wider automation strategy, part of your center of excellence, to ensure that your workflows and your processes can action the right data at the right time. So that's a really interesting area, and I'll give an example in a moment that combines this, but we then move into, oh, sorry, Scott.
And just to give some reassurance from the community, data and finance, we've all felt that pain point over the years. It's almost the elephant in the room in most transformation programs when it comes to finance, is the quality and the availability of complete and accurate data. But this is a little bit more tactical in nature. That there are, it's not about solving the whole data challenge. I don't think you're saying, Harrison. I think it's about picking the data that you need and gaining integrity from that part of the environment. So it's not as daunting as it might initially sound, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give an example of this, we was working with a client that had a real challenge around their goods receipt not invoiced area. So the first thing we needed to do was understand, well, which goods have been receipted and not invoiced. It sounds simple, but not always as straightforward. So we used a tool to automate the extraction and the transformation of the data to then load that into our next step, our automated tool. So the first step of that was tactical in nature, but and addressed a small area, but it then drove a much larger transformation off the back of it. So, something as simple as, can I automate the way that that this area, for example, GRNI, is extracted and transformed so that I can drive action is really important, and also can lead to much broader benefits than probably originally anticipated. We then go into workflow automation. So the difference between workflow and process automation in this perspective is we do a lot of automation using RPA, tools like UiPath and Power Platform through Microsoft and many others in the market, but they often automate tasks. So if we're looking at procure to pay, we've got an automated bot that releases invoices or creates invoices or POs or does those small tasks within an overall process. How do you orchestrate? How do you workflow that process? And again, automation not necessarily being just low-code tools. How do you ensure that your platform is doing that? And where it's not, how do you create that digital workflow around it? And the real key here is, if you can't understand where a case is along a process, along a broader process, then it's really difficult to actually drive that kind of inherent end-to-end automation, because you're not able to understand where I am and therefore where you're trying to get to. So that workflow automation that sits across an entire end-to-end level one process, such as P2P or order to cash, allows you to then identify pain points across that workflow, but then also to improve the handoff between technology and human interaction across that process. Because one challenge that we often see with technology is adoption. And that's not adoption from the technology team, it's adoption from the finance professionals. The way that really a few simple ways of getting over that are, to humanize the way that the finance professionals see the automation. And part of that is to include them in the process, include them in the workflow. So you can actually name, a lot of our clients name the bots, name the automations with human names, so that you can say, okay, Bob's just handed me this complete package, and now I need to take it forward doing what I need to do, and it takes away some of that fear factor that you get in functions when looking at applying automation. So that workflow around it really helps drive the end-to-end automation. And then moving into process, this
And
again.
I'll
Sorry,
jump
yeah.
in, Harrison, only so you can take a sip of water, because I know you've been
Yeah,
going for a
cheers.
couple of minutes. I think it's important that that adoption point around the people, is something that needs to be considered. We talked about finance professionals wanting access to this sort of technology, and I think that's important. But adoption is also about accepting and the fear factor that Harrison referenced. Automation isn't about taking people out of roles or FTE headcount. In fact, in the last 5 years, I don't think I've worked with a client yet that's talked about FTE reduction. It's actually about doing more with less. It's about not only giving your professionals access to the right tools and the right capabilities, but also allowing them to do much more value add jobs, so much more forward looking analysis, horizon scanning, all those finance roles that people first got into the job for, and getting them away from that swivel chair accounting, as I call it, moving data from one system to the other. So the adoption is often warmly welcomed, but remove that fear factor, remove the perception of what it could be. We've got the same challenge with AI out there at the moment, but that's a whole different subject. But the people part of this is so important. Harrison, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give an example of that, so if I take the GRNI use case that I spoke about in data, what we then did with that is now we have a trusted data source that we know we have these goods that have been receipted and not invoiced. One of the real pain points in the finance team was they felt when they were reaching out to the business to get updates on this, where is the invoice? Has the receipt been raised in error, etc. They felt like they were pestering the business, and it was a really low emotional touch point for both the business and the finance user, because there was a lot of tension in that continuous conversation back and forth. And it also wasn't particularly value add for the finance professionals to spend their time reaching out to people on email to understand where the invoice is and etc. So what we did with that information was create a chatbot through the Microsoft Power Platforms that reaches out to you in Teams, and it reaches out to you individually, sends you a message, and it says to you, "Hi, Scott, we saw that you receipted these 100 pens. We haven't received an invoice. Here's 4 options for you. Would you like me to chase the supplier and do the invoice and ask them to share the invoice? Would you like me to return the receipt? Was it raised in error? Do I need to close the PO? Is actually the PO in error? Or do you want me to just wait because you've got it in hand and I can come back to you in a couple of days to check in?" And that kind of interaction, actually the use of the tool massively increased, because it wasn't just another email in an inbox. This was someone reaching out to you on chat, although it being a bot, and just giving you a one-click solution to solving the problem. So it improved that employee experience, not just for the finance professional, but for the businesses that the finance professionals are partnering with, and it just created less tension between the functions. So it's a really good example of where the data leads through to the process, and then therefore that workflow was more transparent. I know as someone within the business how that process works more efficiently, and you can imagine repeating that with any other process, any other task where finance have to reach out to the business to get an update, to get a piece of information, etc. You can transition that away. That doesn't reduce the need for finance professionals. It just allows them to be finance professionals, not robots just reaching out and sending emails all day. So that's a really interesting use case that we went through. I think another one, and I guess just to add on to this, once you have this foundation, once you understand your data, your workflow and your processes, that's when the conversation of adoption of machine learning, AI should start. It's possible to have a successful deployment of AI without having this foundation, but is it sustainable? I would challenge and say probably not, because those ways of working, that fundamental understanding of how these different elements interact with each other won't be there. So I think this gives you a platform to grow off. And an example of that is an organization that we're working with around a new technology called communications mining. And what that really means is, how do we turn communications, so emails into an inbox, phone calls, any kind of inbound conversation, how do we turn that into actionable insights? And what this technology does is it scans an inbox. It can read conversations from an email, from a phone call, and it can tell you the sentiment. It can tell you what the conversation was about. It can help to categorize. So all those large inboxes, whether they're internal communications from internal clients or external communications to customers, it allows you to turn this large unstructured volume of information into actionable insights. And then, for example, if the customer's emailing about changing an address, well, the tool can automatically identify that. It can identify the new email address, postal address, and then you can have a bot go and create that new address in the system. And you can imagine that being replicated for many types of communications. So that's another example of, if you get the data right, then you can drive the process and the workflow off the back of it, and then drive down the value add tasks and allow your finance professionals to speak to those internal clients, those partners, on the things that are most important, not on those small queries that can easily be handled through automation.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add on that, Harrison, I think is the perspective of the CFO. You know, there is a lot of products out there. There's a lot of technology. You've already referenced 3 or 4 of them. You know, let's not underestimate. There's a level of configuration here. You know, you talked about that communications, machine learning activity. There is still configuration. There's still learning to go through. It's not out of the box. You know, we've all been exposed to product sales people who, you know, claim it, you know, solves all your problems on day one. So let's just, you know, as a finance community, we need to have that expectation that we're, you know, we need to put effort into this, and we need to, you know, give it time, and that's when you get the outcomes and the value you need. I think that's fair as well, Harrison, right?
Absolutely, and I think that is a really good segue into the final point around this slide, which is many of your organizations will have this technology available already. So what typically happens is, a lot of, particularly in some finance functions, is we have an AP issue, so we go to market for an AP tool. We then have an issue for something else, and we go to market for that tool. Whereas here, there's not many automation or challenges that can't be resolved through the combination of data automation, process automation, and workflow automation. And therefore, you may already have the tools, the capabilities, the expertise, potentially the capacity to resolve some of your key challenges using your existing environment. So what I would recommend is, when thinking about how you take automation forward, your strategy for 2024, understanding what technology you already exists within your environment is a really key way of potentially saving a lot of time and effort, as well as monetary value.
I think let's be frank, right? Any CFO, financial director, financial controller on the call, you know, talking to your IT colleagues and saying, look, most of us will operate in the Microsoft environment. You know, Microsoft as a part of the standard licensing package that enterprises have, we have it. You guys will have it. There is a whole series of automation solutions. It's a very simple question to ask IT. Do you have the capability? Is that an area you're looking to build out on? You know, is there an opportunity for finance to get involved in that? And I think that's a really simple question to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So just conscious of time, we're going to jump into a second Menti poll. So many people were at the adoption phase. So whichever phase you put yourself at, it'll be really interesting to know, what's the biggest challenge you foresee to get into that next phase, that next stage. If you're at adoption, how do you get to expansion? If you're at if you haven't started, how do you start to explore? If you're exploring, how do you get to adoption? So we'll just run a quick poll again, just to get your perspectives.
And if you're in adoption, Harrison, what's sort of some of the things that would move you into that next phase?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges we see with organizations starting to adopt this, and you highlighted this earlier, is you're looking for the wrong benefits. If you're looking to, and it's the one that was
at the top.
On top there. So that wasn't planned. But difficulty realizing benefits and ROI is a really big challenge, because typically you're automating hands and feet. You're not really taking out full FTEs. So how do you get to that stage? Well, you change the way that you measure benefits, or you start to measure them better. Sorry. And from there, you can really start to improve. So one of the things that we really try to do is understand what's the business strategy, what are the pillars underneath that, and how does the automation strategy affect those pillars? Because if you're directly impacting the business strategy, even if it's not quantifiable directly with how much automation played in driving that business strategy forward, if it's being successful, then you can be assured that the automation's been part of that. Lack of resources is a big challenge, and that's something that we help a lot of organizations with. We partner as an extension of the Centre of Excellence. So one thing that we see often is organizations want to maintain their technology themselves, but they want to be able to have the capacity, the burst capacity, the speed of delivery. And that's a really key partnership that we have with many of our clients, which is we can come in, we can assess the challenges, the opportunities, we can deliver, and then we can hand over and transition into our clients' BAU operations so that they can run this in a sustainable way. And as we go through that, we upskill and train many people throughout the organization as well.
What I will say, Harrison, I think certainly when I talk to the finance leaders, there's a common theme out there amongst our clients, and it's one we'll all recognise, and that's doing more with less. It's a cliche, particularly in the finance community, and those top two there that are coming out at the top of the poll, that's absolutely people and time. And I think that will continue to be a challenge. And then there's an element here of chicken and egg, right? The automation gives you in the future that people and time to do more value add activities, but you've got to build in the first instance. And I think, partnering with somebody like a Protiviti or other partners are available clearly, gives you that partner, that trusted partner that can help you rapidly get to some of that value. I'd also say start small. Ask the simple question of IT that I referenced earlier, and start small. Start with GRNI, goods received, not invoiced. It's a sub process, but it demonstrates value. It demonstrates some of the subjective value you get around automation, and you'll realize some of those benefits. Not all of them will work on a spreadsheet, but I think it's about delivering that value quickly, a challenge that we all recognize in today's day and age. Harrison, we are approaching the bottom of the hour, so any closing thoughts from you, any calls to action for the community?
Yeah, I think the call to action here is take a look back at what you've been doing year to date, what that automation strategy is. Does it encompass data? Does it encompass process? Does it encompass workflow? And how can you take that forward into 2024 and understand better the technology that you already have available? So I think they would be the two key messages that I would say is go away and assess those opportunities, those biggest pain points across your function, and understand which part of that pain point is related to data, process, workflow, and then also which technologies do you already have available. And I'd say they're two kind of actionable, tangible tasks that you can start between now and the end of the year.
Harrison, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for attending. We've had some good turnouts over the three series. Thank you to Michael Melrose for Series 1. Thank you to Clive Davis for our second session, sorry, not series sessions. And thank you to Harrison for our third session. So that completes our Navigating the Future of Finance series for this year. We are taking feedback on both the series that we've had, but also opportunities to raise topics in the future. I think already, I think quite unsurprisingly, the topic of AI, partly because we see it on the front page of the BBC News every time I open it, but what does AI mean in the context of finance? I think that seems to be very popular, so that could be something we could explore in Q1, but we are very open to other ideas and suggestions, so please do share. We are very interested. That brings us to the bottom of the hour. Again, thank you all for your attendance. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you in the new year. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.